Welcome back, everybody. Go ahead and close my door real quick. So, I went and made me some breakfast. We're going to continue on with some of the videos we were watching, but here is my breakfast. It is bratwursts, rice, 5 eggs with salt, pepper, and hot sauce. It's some Valentine hot sauce. So let's get to it.
On some important Nebula
Not just
business.
bikes.
I didn't spend much time in New York, though. Just enough time to eat some great tacos and see some of the street improvements that have happened over the past few years. It really is impressive what they've managed to build in such a short period of time. Ultimately, I was on my way to Canada to see family, so I needed to get from New York to Toronto. I could fly in just under 2 hours, plus the typical 2 or more extra hours of airport nonsense. The drive could be done in 8 hours, though it would probably take longer with traffic and the border crossing. So, of course, I chose to take Amtrak because I'm a train loving masochist. This
Yeah,
train was
trains.
scheduled to take 12 and a half hours, and to their credit, we arrived pretty close to that time, pulling into Toronto Union Station in just under 13 hours. All in all, this trip went about as well as it could have, and it's a good example of the best case scenario for this train. So let me show you what it's like to take a cross-border Amtrak train these days, how it compares to some of my other train trips this year, and when we're done, I want to talk about the next train I took in Canada because if you think Amtrak is bad, Via Rail has a new baggage policy, and oh boy, do I need to rant about it.
Get it. So
Public
eggs, hot
transit in New
sauce,
York
and
is
rice.
known for being very comprehensive, but sometimes really old and in dire need of repair. So it was very nice to see that my train was departing from the newly renovated Moynihan train station at Penn Station. The new train hall is really nice, spacious, and bright, with lots of natural light coming in from the skylight above. Though it is an interesting choice to build a train hall without any seating so that everyone needs to sit on the floor. And it's also
Oh,
bizarre that there isn't like a big departure board like every train hall
it's
ever.
hot.
The only one I could find without leaving the train hall was this one. Attached to the train hall are some shops, as well as a food court. And the proper departure board that should probably be in the train hall itself. Apart from the lack of seating, this is a pretty nice building. This should really be the norm for US train stations. My train left at 7:15 in the morning, which was a painfully early time to catch a train, which is why I booked a hotel literally across the street from the station. At this time in the morning, the train hall was a lot quieter. The food court was closed, but it was still possible to buy a bagel at least. I was going to explore the station and waiting area, but then I found that travelers to Canada needed to check in early to have their passports checked, and then we needed to wait in this ridiculously long line. If you're traveling to Canada from here, make sure you print a paper ticket because apparently they need to stamp it. About 20 minutes before departure, they let all the Canadian bound passengers board first because Canadians are better than Americans, and so I
Fuck you,
boarded the
bitch.
train. Business class, of
I'm
course,
sorry.
because if I'm going to spend 12
The
and a
fuck
half
you.
hours on a train, I want a comfortable seat. If you'd like to ensure that I travel business class on every train I take, then you can support this channel on Nebula. But seriously, this train costs 134 for coach and 195 for business class. So I figured it was probably worth paying the extra $4.80 per hour for more comfort. To put that into perspective, though, if you book early enough, you can get a flight for as low as $80, plus the cost of getting to and from the airport, of course. The seats in business class were very old but spacious, and they reclined pretty well. The seats had a good sized tray table and power sockets, too. The coach class seats were closer together and narrower to fit a 2x2 configuration, but they still looked pretty comfy. The one benefit to riding on an older train is that they were built to a more luxurious standard. They don't build them like they used to. While it might be faster to fly, the real reason to take this train is the views. It really is quite pretty, especially on the west side of the train. We stopped at some cute old train stations with silly names like Poughkeepsie and Schenectady. We even stopped in Amsterdam. I wish I knew that before. I could have saved myself an international flight. We also had a short stop in Rome, but I couldn't see the Colosseum. Some of the towns we passed through had definitely seen better days, and the later part of the journey did not have the nicest scenery unless you have a thing for surface parking lots. I also got to experience the time-honored American tradition of sitting around and waiting for a freight train to pass because the freight companies own the track and their trains get priority. The law says they're supposed to give priority to passenger trains, but this is almost never enforced. So, whenever a segment of track is needed by two trains, the freight train usually wins out over the passenger train. Amtrak recommends using their app to track the progress of the train while en route. Unfortunately, when I tried to log into the app, it would get stuck in a loop and bump me back to the login screen. I managed to get into the status page with a web browser, but it would hang when trying to update. So it seems like Amtrak's IT department is about as well funded as you'd expect it to be. Eventually, I just used this third-party site, which helpfully also showed how late we were running. When we weren't slowed due to freight trains, our top speed was around 125 kilometers per
Mm.
hour, which is higher than the highway speed limit in New York, but this is still obviously not a high-speed train. I find that long train journeys aren't really a problem though, because it's so comfortable to sit on a train. When you're in a car, you're strapped down and can't move. You can't even get up to take a piss. I hate sitting in a car for long periods of time, especially if I'm driving, because you kind of have to pay attention to the road the whole time or everybody dies a fiery death. And on an airplane, it's loud, the air is dry, the seats are cramped, and the food tastes terrible at altitude. So after about 5 or 6 hours on an airplane, I am tapped out and wanting to get off. But because trains are so much more comfortable, I can last a lot longer.
We do apologize for this delay.
On a train, you can look out the window, get up and walk around and stretch your legs, go to the bar car, or write a script for a YouTube video. This train had free Wi-Fi, and while not exactly super fast, reliability was much better than I expected. Certainly better than any airplane Wi-Fi. So I was able to easily get work done on the train, which made the trip surprisingly productive. I had a late lunch in the bar car as we passed through Rochester. The chicken banh mi wasn't amazing, but it was way better than airplane food. This sandwich plus a cup of tea was $10. As we got into this part of the trip, the views became less scenic and mostly farmland, but it was still pretty nice. At this point, we were running about half an hour late, but the schedule promised to make up that time before we got to the border.
Delicious.
Also, Amtrak doesn't employ a janitor, so the toilets were not looking so great after 10 hours. We arrived at Niagara Falls Station on the US side and waited for a really long time. I thought that maybe they were swapping to a Canadian locomotive or something, but apparently not. But eventually, we departed the dismal city of Niagara Falls, New York, crossed the bridge, and entered the slightly less dismal city of Niagara Falls, Ontario. When I saw the Via sign and Go Bus, I knew that I was finally back in the Great White North. Land of maple syrup, poutine, hockey, beavers, Nanaimo bars, ketchup chips, butter tarts, pineapple on pizza, Mounties, plaid flannel shirts, moose, evergreen forest, donuts that used to be good before they merged with Burger King, people who apologize when you step on their toe, the largest highway in North America, and way too many cars. When we arrived at the station, we had to pack up all of our luggage and go into the station for passport control, which
All right,
I
hold
wasn't
on.
allowed
One more
to.
time. I gotta get up because I gotta put this plate away. And I gotta get some water as well in my mug, my stein, if you will. Okay. Now, I actually did figure this out, right? To cook my breakfast, right? The eggs, the eggs and rice took like maybe, well, the rice, because I cooked it last night and I heated it up in the microwave, took like 10, not 10 minutes, like 2 minutes to heat up in the microwave. The eggs took like 10 minutes, because they're whole eggs that I just flipped once. Didn't come out the way I wanted it to, as like the flat sheet of egg. It was close enough. So it was like a calzone of egg. Then the thing that took the longest would be the bratwurst, because I froze them, right? So that way I could store them for a long time. But first I boiled them. That took the longest amount of time. And then I put them in the air fryer for 10 minutes. So total time around 40 minutes to make that breakfast. It was mainly waiting around, but hey, I made it and it was delicious, and I'm ready to take on the rest of today.
Film, but to be honest, it was pretty uneventful. Though it is interesting that this is the last time I'll ever enter Canada on a Canadian passport, so I guess that's a thing. Then we walked outside in the rain and were herded into a small waiting room. But after about 45 minutes, they let us all back onto the train. I went back to my seat, the announcements became bilingual,
Plus d'informations.
the Wi-Fi stopped working, and we left Niagara Falls Station right on 15 minutes late. The quality of the track was noticeably worse on the Canadian side. The train was rocking quite a bit more than it was in New York, even though we were traveling at a third of the speed. These are tracks owned
I
by
think
the
this is the
freight
one.
railroad CN, and clearly they're not really into stuff like track maintenance, which is the other big problem with passenger trains running on tracks owned by freight companies that typically run their trains much slower and don't care. And of course, the train slowed down and stopped several times for no apparent reason. I'm sure these drivers appreciated us coming to a full stop for several minutes right over a level crossing. But once we got off CN's shitty tracks and onto the government-owned GO Transit tracks at Aldershot, we started going consistently faster, which again is the fundamental issue with Via Rail. It's always going to suck as long as they ride on the tracks owned by the freight railroads. As I watched the sun set on the car-infested wasteland that is Canadian suburbia, I started to think, would I recommend this trip to other people? Maybe. It depends how much you love trains. Because if you're not fond of train journeys that are longer than they need to be, then you'd probably be better off flying. You really need to be okay
So we
sitting
could
on a
get a class
train that you
7.
know should be so much faster if the US and Canada would just put even a fraction of the hundreds of billions that they spend on road projects into making passenger rail service better. But if you can put that
So they could still
aside
hit
and appreciate the
125 miles an
journey,
hour.
then you'll enjoy some nice scenery, a comfortable seat, and a pretty relaxing way to travel. But it's just so frustrating that the richest country in the world can't run a train better than this, between the most populous city in the US and the most populous city in Canada.
With
New
your
York to
financial
Toronto
support, I
is
can make it.
similar to the distance between Amsterdam and Berlin, a trip I just took a few weeks ago and which took just over 6 hours. And this was not a high-speed train. When this old clunker showed up, I thought, wow, Deutsche Bahn is clearly saving their absolute worst rolling stock for their Netherlands routes. But it still got there in less than half the time as the Amtrak train. What's more insane is that New York to Toronto is almost exactly the same distance as Tokyo to Hiroshima, a trip I took earlier this year. This trip took just under 4 hours. If Amtrak
On the
were
bullet
as
train.
fast as a Japanese Shinkansen, my trip would have taken a third as long, which would be much faster than driving. And likely faster than flying too, once you factor in all the extra time it takes getting to, from, and through the airport. I have a previous video about how high-speed rail in Italy has basically made domestic air travel obsolete, if you'd like to learn more. And if we have any interest in cutting carbon emissions, the train wins every time. Flying emits over 200 grams of CO2 per person kilometer. Driving a gasoline car is about 170. Taking this diesel Amtrak train comes out to around 100 grams, but if it were a high-speed electric train, it could be as low as 4. The world needs more high-speed electric trains, especially for distances under 800 kilometers. New York to Toronto would be an absolutely ideal route for high-speed rail,
Ooh,
but there
okay.
are many
125. Appropriate distance for high speed rail. Between 100 and 500 miles. I'll pick a spot here. Measure distance. That's Denver, right? Denver to Dallas. 600 miles. So just over. About from here to Portland. 900. Still too far. So I guess no, I'd still want to be connected here. But it says between 1 and 500 miles. Damn. Okay.
Many others. So while this train ride wasn't terrible, it really wasn't good enough either. America deserves better train service than this. But while it could be argued that Amtrak is doing its best while being chronically underfunded, Via Rail in Canada seems determined to make train travel as painful as possible. While I was in Canada, we needed to go from Toronto to my hometown of London, Ontario, and since driving on the 401 is absolutely awful these days, we decided to take the train. Now, I've talked about Canadian train travel several times before on this channel. I've talked about the long queues to board the train, the staff weighing suitcases, the ancient train cars,
Which makes no
painfully
sense.
slow speeds, or stopped completely waiting for a freight train to pass, and whatever you call the polar opposite of level boarding. I've described the experience before as all the pain of flying while taking longer than driving. And I found it funny that their new ads show places that you can't even get to without a car, but I'm sorry to say, it's actually gotten worse. First of all, Via Rail has increased their prices a lot. The round-trip fare for our family of 4 to fake London was $510.
Damn.
Fortunately, I had some frequent traveler points that brought the price down, but those points are gone now, so I guess we're never taking this train again. Now, Dutch people love to tell me how trains in the Netherlands are way too expensive, and I agree they should absolutely be cheaper. But Toronto to London is almost exactly the same distance as Amsterdam to Groningen. Even if we paid full price, which we would never do, that trip would be about 180 euros here in the Netherlands. With an off-peak discount, it would be 110. But of course, if we actually took a trip to Groningen, we'd purchase an NS group ticket, so the entire round trip for all 4 of us would be 73 euros. Meanwhile, Via Rail wanted over 330 euros.
Damn.
And what's worse is that Via only offers 6 trains per day between Toronto and London, while there are 55 trains per day between Amsterdam and Groningen. It's not even comparable. And you're probably already wondering, why the hell do they weigh your bags before getting on a train? Well, that's gotten worse too. Because Via has now implemented a new luggage policy, and it's basically the same as an airline. Now, airplanes
why?
have luggage restrictions because they need to, fly through the air. But trains don't typically do that. Via says that they need to weigh your bags for safety reasons because Canadian labor laws state that employees cannot be required to lift more than 50 pounds without assistance. So if you need help lifting your luggage, it needs to be under that amount, which seems crazy, but given how ridiculously difficult it is to hike up into a Via train, I can almost believe that's a legitimate problem, but this new baggage policy is not that. And I can hear you say, surely they wouldn't actually enforce such a ridiculous policy for a train, right?
Of course they do.
Well, let me tell you a story. I was traveling to a lot of cities on this trip, so I was traveling light, 1 carry-on suitcase and a backpack, and that was absolutely fine on every part of my trip. But on our trip back to Toronto, I had a lunch bag, and this put me over the new Via Rail baggage requirements. They stopped us and said we'd need to pay $25 for this extra baggage if we wanted to take it with us. For a train. There was a lot of storage space on this train. This wasn't being enforced because of space restrictions or something. This is just a cynical cash grab by Via Rail, and that pisses me off. I love trains. As far as I'm concerned, when trains are done well, they are the most comfortable, enjoyable, relaxing, and all-around best way to travel. But Via Rail has ruined trains. By emulating all the worst parts of airline travel, they have made the train the worst possible option. And that's a problem. The vast majority of people traveling from Toronto to London will drive on Highway 401. This is the widest highway in all of North America, yet it's completely clogged with traffic at almost all times of the day. And so billions are being spent to widen it in a never-ending chain of construction projects. But as decades of studies have proven, there's no solution to car traffic except viable alternatives to driving. That doesn't mean that everybody needs to take the train, but it does mean you need to provide viable options for those who don't need to drive. But when you make train travel just as bad as airline travel while taking longer than driving, that's not a viable option, and traffic is never going to get better. Unfortunately, there are still far too many people in denial of that fact, either through ignorance or because they make more money keeping everybody in cars. If you'd like to learn more, I have a video about how adding more lanes doesn't fix traffic, link in the description. And if you don't want to learn more, well, enjoy sitting in traffic, I guess.
True.
I just hate that millions of people in the US and Canada will never know what it's like to ride a genuinely good train. And that makes me sad because trains can be so much better than this.
Oh, they can.
I have several videos about train travel in many different countries, and I'll leave links to them in the description. Thanks for watching to the end of this video. I really appreciate it. I'd also like to thank all of my channel supporters who pay me to upgrade to business class. If you'd like to support this channel so that I can make more train-tastic content, the absolute best way to do that is by signing up to Nebula at go.nebula.tv/notjustbikes. On Nebula, you can watch all of my videos early, as well as thousands of videos from other talented creators, all ad-free and sponsor-free. Go to go.nebula.tv/notjustbikes or follow the link in the description to learn more. A lot has been said about
Okay, I was just checking something. So we're gonna, I don't know, I'm gonna play some World of Warcraft at this moment. We'll see if it comes through. Oh, they'll be performing maintenance. The 27th, 9 a.m. PST to 10 a.m. PST. Hey, here we go. Coyote Thunder. Let me log into you, make some bags. Actually, I will level this Coyote Thunder for a little bit because I need to be able to make what's it called? Let me go to the tailor real quick. 8369. Wait, tailoring trainer is this way. I think. No, it's going to be in the mage quarter, I believe. I'll level him later. Tailor, because I see the tailoring stuff. Unless this is the tailor. Here we go. Tailoring supplier. Not to make linen bag. I first need to create all these. Welcome aboard, everybody. I think I'm my only other viewer. Oh, I'm so close. Oh well. I could have made a whole bunch of thems. So now to send these bags to Kaori Thunder, my warrior, troll warrior. And of course, I'll send all of my cloth to him. Kaori Thunder. Yar we go. Food. I don't need that. This. I should probably send the Shadow Gem to other Coyote. Alright, let's go. I'm honestly just probably gonna end up farming a whole bunch of what is it? A bunch of copper on my way. Admitting I'm only level 8 right now. But let's check slash played. 2 hours and 28 minutes total. Five stacks of supplies. Those supplies would be over there by the harpies. I am now neutral with Ratchet though, which is nice. I am large sized. Because then I need to run back down to Sinjin, and in Sinjin, I'll be able to turn in this quest and then go complete these two quests right here. And I'm going to need maybe another stack of thrown weapons. It's soulbound, unfortunately, so quest item, and this is all be sellable stuff. Ooh. Ooh. Ooh ah. Ooh. Ooh ah. Ee. Ooh ee. Ooh ah. Ay ay. Oh. Green. Lime. Is a regular ass apple. In case I get any more of those. Put my stone out here. Oh, the Admiral's orders. Go turn that thing in. Whilst I am here. Deliver the orders to Ogamar. Real sticky glue. Ah, I forgot all about my real sticky glue. I could have used that on Argyle and saved my Coyote Thunder at 19. Or I guess 16, 15, somewhere around there. Copper vein. Ah, there's another copper vein. Where is it? It's somewhere over there. I think I'll pass on that one for now because I gotta keep heading this way. Mind you guys, I can absolutely 110,000% rant about what I would do as governor. So, you got any questions about that? Let me know. chunk of boar meat. Look at that level 16 warrior. Oh no, dodged. Yes. Yes. Mining. That's what I exist for at this moment. Too bad it doesn't provide XP. There's a mine. That's what you get. Let's go ahead and turn in this quest. Mm. Dang. I don't think I get anything else until level 10. I'm gonna pick my tooth. Give me a second. I'm gonna get Zalazane's head. Get this one. And then get this. Oh yeah, get Zalazane's head, which is the level 9. Or yeah, Zalazane's, which is a 10. Get his head along with defeating those trolls. And get Mashrina's skull. Can't believe I'm missing so much. I'm gonna run. Damn. If only you'd stop dodging every single one of my attacks. Going to slow down your attacks, that's for sure. Oh, that's gonna hurt. Stamina and strength reduced. Oh, come on, please, 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 please. Zalazane, you bitch. I gotcha. Ooh. Alright. Time for me to get out of here. First, let me eat. Alright. It would also help if I would add this to my axe. Not enough rage. I will come this way. There's Hex. Where's them voodoo trolls at? There's a voodoo troll. I wish I had a faster axe. A faster main hand would make all of this so much easier, because I could generate rage so much quicker. Hey, a chest. Let's see what's inside of it. It's good stuff, don't get me wrong, but still. Nope. I don't need that social aggro on me. 2.1. It's better than mine, that's for sure. A voodoo troll. Cudgelled. It's a voodoo troll. Where's the hex trolls? I need a hex troll. Hexed troll. Hexed troll. So I need 2 more voodoo trolls. I'm gonna whoop your ass inside this hut. All right, let's get out of here. Brr, 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 grrr, 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 grrr. So, I don't know if this would count as cheating in hardcore, but I am playing with my Razer Tartarus. It is a 20 key plus directional pad plus button plus wheel. So I don't know if it's cheating. I don't care if it is cheating because I will take whatever advantage I can take. I've already been defeated. Let's see. 2 warriors and a mage thus far. I mean, I may be a flesh tuber or future governor, but I'd still collab with like any one of the streamers. Honestly, Nimi. I like Nimi. I like the color green. I like that she's a tapir. I understand who she used to be, but we'll ignore that because this is a resurgence. And now we return to here. Because then there's that one, that one. Honestly, I think I should go to Brill yet again. Copper vein. Bandeamos. I don't know what that means. But I said it. I wonder how it'll go on here. Because I tried Twitch. I got very few to nobody. But now we're here. So let's get it. Coyote Thunder. Let's happen. Copper Vein. Oh, I'm not about to do Fizzle. He damn near killed me last time. But it's always Argrel who's taking me down. Oh, oh. Let's go to the Warrior Trainer, see if I got anything. Because I know I probably won't get any actual points until level 10, and even then I'm probably going majority tank. So I need to go Fury tank. Who knows, though? I did like the Gladiator. Hopefully they bring something like that back where you can, you know, do quality DPS as a tank. And not rely solely upon, Sunder Armor. Let's see, that's 10 is Rend, Overpower is 12. Dual Wield is 20, Battle Shout is 12. Blood Rage is 10. Shield Bash is 12. That's 1.7. Honestly, I need that more. Because that 1.7 is going to give me so much more attack speed, which, in turn, is going to equal out to more rage generation. Ooh. I need so much better armor. So that's that. 8. So I guess it's the shield that I need. Because I just need some better stuff, man. It's like for reals. It sucks being as broke as I am. 25. Yeah, that'll be fine. With this, I should be able to do some more, right? A fast axe and a shield. Because I do need to go now into the mountains, or into here, and wreck some harpies. Will I get the supplies to give to the one goblin? Because the Bilgewater cartel does not exist yet. Oh, that scared me for a second. Levitt. Oh no! In and out like a ninja. But that'll be for later. As for that, I gotta go over there. Okay. Return in the Admiral's orders. Steam Weedle Cartel. When do I get Rend? When do I get the Oni buff? Kaori Thunder. Is anything else in Descend? Okay. I don't want to die, mind you. But, is it just in case? Hey, I feel rested. Always report your gold sellers. Ooh. Where is the lieutenant's insignia? Over here? Yes. How often does the shits happen? Is my question. Where's the chrono boon is another question. Well, let me go ahead and look up these two things. Chrono boon. Hard core. Is that it? Oh, it doesn't keep them active the entire time, unfortunately. Let's see. Um, Nixia buff timer. 30 minutes to rend. Okay. So it said 30 minutes to rend. Servers are going to go down. I shouldn't have anything in the bank, should I? Yeah, no, good here. Go ahead and actually check on my this homie. See if he's won any. Increase wand damage. Let's go to the tailoring trainer. I'm gonna change realms for a little bit. Play something a little, I guess, wild growth. Let's go. Mm. Coyote Priest. Let's just go as Coyote Thunder. Actually, I should probably go and farm some humanoids first. Blacksmithing. Yeah, I remember that I have to go into Old Town, but this is because I created Coyote Thunder. I go to Old Town. Be over there. One 1.9. Oh shit, Midas Stormwind. There's no sign, but I know it's here. Pickaxe is so expensive. Whatever. Head back to Goldshire. Do I need to turn in here, actually? No, I don't. Let's see if I can actually. I will. I'll buy it. Armor, weaponsmith, leather clothier. Trade supplier. I'm gonna buy it just because I need it. So now let's go. I'm gonna go smelt. Because this will bring me down to 2 stacks. But I also gotta sell. Decrease the armor of the target. I'm just gonna need to keep you. Bag of marbles. Oh, I can learn swords. This is Season of Discovery. You know, so I got some cooler spells. It is unfortunate though that I can't play a Blood Elf because that's what my main is a Blood Elf Paladin. Has been since I started playing in Burning Crusades. So I did have two accounts. I thought I lost this account for a long time, but it's actually the one that I had at the beginning with my original Kingslayer. But then I have a lot more stuff on my other account. So I don't know. I could merge the two accounts together because they're both mine. Weapon trainer. Haha, he's right up front. I'll be back at level 10. Yes. Buy my hammer. Crafting time. That was almost my end. Let's see, increases your chance to block attacks with your shield by 6% after being the victim of a critical strike. Increases my devotion aura, retribution. Improve that. Reduces the mana cost of your judgment and seal spells by 3%. Holy increases my intellect by 2%. And then divine increases my strength. Let's go with that one. I've got one chunk of boar meat. We snaw. We snaw. Hmm. Oh damn, it's starting to hit me. I need to go to Stormwind. Damn, do I want to keep playing? I mean, it's only, what, 10 a.m.? I gotta try and stay awake until, well, really as late as I can. Would be nice if I had someone to talk to. Make it easier. Again, it's not climate change, it's weather manipulation. Israel has always been the Nazis. They were the Nazis at the beginning. Why? Because they were working on a global sympathy campaign to get they were kicked out of 109 nations, they were trying to get back in there. Only because of the basketball Americans. Collateral. Ooh, that's right. I need to put my Patreon thing on my YouTube and channel.
The future of self-driving cars. Some people take a very negative position, claiming that autonomous vehicles are a pipe dream and will never become a reality. They're just another example of the overhyped nonsense that's typical of tech companies these days. And that may be true, but in several US cities today, you can literally open an app, select your destination, and a car with nobody in it will pick you up and drive you there automatically. So self-driving cars are here today, which leads to the other kind of commentary I often see online, that self-driving cars are real, they will be coming to more cities soon, and they will solve all of our transportation problems. They'll make the roads safer, they'll eliminate traffic congestion, they'll be environmentally friendly, they'll provide mobility to everyone, and our cities will be better than ever. I actually disagree with both of these positions, which is why I wanted to make this video, because I do believe that self-driving cars are real and they will be in every city in the near future. The technology is getting better every day, and if these improvements continue on this track, they will fundamentally destroy the fabric of our cities. There is a cautious optimism among many urbanists about self-driving cars. After all, the majority of problems within cities are caused by cars: traffic, pollution, noise, dangerous streets. And there never seems to be enough space available for sidewalks, bike lanes, parks, or anything else, because it's all been turned into wide roads and parking lots. Anybody who has tried to get around without a car in a car-centric city knows that human drivers can be really scary, especially when they're speeding or driving distracted, which happens way too often. So having cars driven by computers can't possibly be worse than what we have now, right? And it is possible that with the right incentives and regulations, that could be our future. But given the course we're on, I believe that future is increasingly unlikely, especially when you consider the history of how automobiles destroyed cities in the 20th century, but also the effects of money and capital. It's estimated that over $160 billion has already been invested into the development of autonomous vehicles. So there is a lot of money riding on this technology, and therefore a lot of pressure to get self-driving cars to market as soon as possible. When people see these vehicles cruising around the streets of San Francisco, they might believe that this technology is right around the corner. You can go there right now and see them dropping off passengers. They follow the speed limit and appear to drive cautiously. And it's amazing to see that there's nobody in the driver's seat, but that doesn't mean they're always driven by computer. As of last November, Cruise confirmed that their robotaxis required human assistance every 4 to 5 miles. I don't know how often this is needed today, but you don't have to watch these cars for very long to see that humans definitely still need to take remote control sometimes. This stupid robotaxi got stuck behind a construction toilet trailer until someone in the call center could steer it around. This one sat here for several light cycles because it didn't think it could turn right. The drivers behind it eventually gave up waiting and just drove around. Now, you might be wondering about these remote assistant agents who take control. Who are these people? Where are they located? How much are they paid? What are the working conditions like? But never mind all that. It's a technological miracle, okay? Just shut up and get in the car. Now, of course, this technology will inevitably get better, but nobody knows how long it will take to sort out the long tail of rare occurrences that a self-driving car will encounter in a busy city. And as any experienced product manager will tell you, the first 90% of a project takes 90% of the time, and the last 10% of the project will take the other 90%. The technology is advanced, but fundamentally, self-driving cars are stupid. They're mindless. They make a bunch of dumb mistakes. Recently, in this parking lot for self-driving cars, Waymo vehicles started driving in circles and randomly honking at each other. This happened for days, and this particular video was taken at 4 a.m. The people who live next door were not impressed. There have been dozens of official reports of driverless cars getting in the way of rescue operations, from blocking ambulances to crashing into fire trucks. But it gets worse. Last October, a woman was hit by a car in San Francisco driven by a human driver and knocked into the path of a Cruise robotaxi. Cruise said the vehicle, quote, braked aggressively to minimize impact, and while the robotaxi couldn't stop fast enough to avoid hitting the woman, it still reacted faster than any human could. So that's a win for self-driving cars, right? Except that the woman then fell under the car, so as far as the robotaxi was concerned, she was gone. So it continued to drive, dragging her underneath. A key detail that Cruise initially tried to hide from the press and regulators.
It's a first for police and fire departments involving a driverless car.
The victim was found to be under the left rear wheel of the vehicle.
Thankfully, the woman survived and Cruise cars were taken off the roads, but this is a scary example of how these cars will make new mistakes that we haven't even considered yet. They are not intelligent. They don't even have the object permanence of a toddler. But that hasn't stopped them from being beta tested on public roads, and the citizens of these cities did not agree to this. Several groups in California have protested against being the involuntary test subjects of multi-billion-dollar tech companies. And a Waymo car was even set on fire earlier this year. Self-driving cars have caused a lot of problems in San Francisco.
Waymo cars in San Francisco reportedly caused a big traffic jam just as baseball fans were leaving Oracle Park Monday afternoon. A KTVU viewer shared this video you're looking at showing two self-driving cars stopped in the middle of the Embarcadero.
The advocacy group Safe Street Rebel has published video evidence of self-driving cars running red lights, cutting off drivers, cutting off pedestrians, clogging up intersections, blocking streets, blocking public transit, parking in bike lanes, and what the hell is this car doing to that old woman? So the idea that these cars will always obey the rules of the road is a fantasy. Safe Street Rebel also organizes events like the Week of Cone. Since self-driving cars are programmed to avoid traffic cones at all costs, one of the best way to incapacitate one is to put a traffic cone on its hood. This is called coning, and it's fucking hilarious. I'm sure these mega corporations will lobby to make this a criminal offense, so do it now while you still can. Safe Street Rebel does a lot of great advocacy work that goes beyond reining in tech companies, so definitely check them out if you live in or near San Francisco. I'll leave a link in the description.
Oh, I need to stand.
These protests may slow adoption, but let's face it, there is no way in hell we're going to stop these things from coming to our cities when there are hundreds of billions of dollars on the line. And to be clear, most of these incidents would not have even happened if the self-driving car companies still had safety drivers like they used to. But they're under so much pressure to deliver that they'd rather fuck up the city and even potentially kill people rather than to admit that the technology isn't ready yet.
And that's why we need to make sure that those tech corporations actually have people who can be held accountable, not so they can be, you know, fined as a corporation would.
Self-driving car companies have already lobbied politicians to allow them to operate based only on self-certification, and they've successfully stopped laws that require them to report extensive safety data. Recently, California passed police can't even ticket self-driving car companies when their cars violate traffic laws. It may be that eventually, on average, self-driving cars will be safer than human drivers in the future, but it is incredibly naive to believe that they will not introduce new safety problems of their own. A self-driving car will try to avoid hitting people and objects, and there are dozens of sensors to make sure that doesn't happen. But these sensors are not infallible and they require interpretation by software. It's important for self-driving cars not to crash into things that are there, but it's also important that they don't stop for things that aren't. Like this Tesla in self-driving mode that suddenly came to a stop on the highway and caused an 8-car pileup. You don't want a self-driving car to stop just because there's a bit of garbage blown onto the road or it detects something that won't cross the path of the vehicle anyway.
This is why they need to be
So
able
the
to be
software
sued,
needs to
and people
evaluate
need to be
every
held
object that it
accountable, not
detects.
corporations, because those
The
corporations
first
can only
person
be
to ever
fined,
be
they can't
killed
be
by a
arrested.
self-driving car was a woman in Tempe, Arizona in 2018. She was crossing this road at night while pushing a bicycle and was hit by a modified Volvo SUV driven autonomously by the automated driving system developed by Uber. So why didn't all of this advanced technology prevent killing her? It's not that the car didn't detect her, it's just that it didn't think she was anything worth stopping for. The crash report from the NTSB provides a detailed explanation. The car flipped between identifying her as a vehicle to a bicycle to a general other category. Sometimes it detected her as being in another lane and other times as a static object that wasn't moving. The software didn't consider her to be an important object that was going to cross the path of the SUV until 1.2 seconds before the crash, when it was too late to stop without killing her. So when a self-driving car starts driving towards you, you better hope it hasn't detected you as other. But all this talk about sensors and self-driving obfuscates the real root cause of this crash, which is the atrocious state of American traffic engineering. This area is designed like a freeway with a high speed limit and almost no accommodations for people walking, despite being directly between a rail station and hiking trails. At the time of the crash, the median had a paved roadway designed only to be used by cars if one of the bridges was closed, but it clearly looked like a walking path and it was regularly used by people crossing this road. Instead of any actual pedestrian infrastructure, the city just put up these use crosswalk signs that are still there today. It's disgraceful that traffic engineers put up these signs in a natural place where people would want to cross the road instead of,
Chickens eating.
actually building a crosswalk here.
Let me go to
But
my
what's
channel.
worse is that
Let's
in
go ahead and
2018, it wasn't even physically possible to walk to the crosswalk because of the trees and greenery that had been planted here.
edit.
Since the crash, the solution has been to turn the brick roadway into a rough stone path that is hostile to pedestrians. But they've now cut a hole through the cacti so that it is at least theoretically possible to reach the crosswalk now, though you still have to walk over 200 meters out of your way plus the time it takes to wait for your turn to cross this highway. American traffic engineers routinely bend over backwards to make driving as convenient as possible while making these places actively hostile to pedestrians, then blame the pedestrians when they're hit by a car.
Which is the
In the
worst
US,
shit
around
ever.
42,000 people are killed in car crashes every year, and hundreds of thousands are seriously injured, sometimes with debilitating injuries that will affect them for the rest of their lives. So it's not surprising that the most prominent feature promised by these American self-driving car companies is safety. But the US also has some of the most dangerous roads in the developed world. The most deadly kind of road in the US is the Strode, a road designed for high-speed travel that also tries to act as a destination. Strodes are rare in other countries, especially inside of cities, but they are all over the US and Canada. The nonprofit organization Strong Towns has been warning about the dangers of this kind of road design for over a decade, and I have a previous video about Strodes if you'd like to learn more.
Which again, vote for
There
me.
has
Give
been
me
decades of
your
research
financial
into road
support, and I
safety,
can
and
make
we
at least
know how to make
Colorado
the
a
road
decent
safer,
state.
such as the Vision Zero method developed in Sweden in the 1990s. In fact, if the US had roads as safe as Sweden, they would cut their road fatalities by over 80%, without any new technology at all. But many of these design changes require slowing or restricting cars, and that's a step too far for the US. There's no money to be made in making the streets safer, so the only solution to the dangers caused by the old cars has to be buying new cars. Self-driving car companies do not care about road safety, they care about selling cars and technology. They care about safety in so much as it allows them to sell cars. The moment they can convince regulators and the general public that their cars are safe enough, they will stop caring about safety. So you can expect the messaging to pretty quickly go from preventing road deaths to being, yeah, sure, they kill people, but our marketing department says it's less often than human drivers would, so it's fine. And even if they are safer than American drivers on American roads, the rest of the world is going to get these cars whether we want them or not. And that's an interesting thing to consider because right now, these vehicles are being trained in some of the most car-centric places on Earth. The first locations were undoubtedly chosen because they have very good weather, but I guarantee you that Phoenix, Arizona was also a top choice because it is literally like driving on easy mode. The roads are insanely wide. There are almost no restrictions on where cars can go. It's made up of square grid blocks a mile on each side, and pretty much everybody drives everywhere all the time already. To say that Phoenix is car dependent is a massive understatement. If anthropomorphic cars could design cities, they would design Phoenix. It's also one of the most dangerous places for pedestrians in the entire developed world, but don't worry about that. Self-driving cars will fix everything. San Francisco is certainly more urban. There are people who
Again,
walk and cycle, and there are
we need to make sure that a person at that corporation, an officer of the corporation, is held responsible, held liable directly for the decisions made within the corporation, right? This way, it's not like, oh, we'll just fine you X amount for whatever this is, because they'll just consider that to be a form of, doing business. What it really needs to be is it that say the CEO, CFO, uh, and like the top executives of Uber would all need to be held liable. All of them thrown in jail. Sure, they would have bail, but they would then have to pay for that bail themselves. And that bail should then be, say, 10% of whatever their annual income is. Right? They'd fucking learn.
public transit vehicles as well.
But
I've
corporations would
lived in the
also
Bay
want to
Area, and I
assassinate
can
me
tell you
in
that
that
even
event,
San
which is why I
Francisco
need to
is pretty
create.
car-centric and car-friendly compared to most cities in Europe, which I think is going to be a problem when this technology is rolled out internationally. These cars are trained to drive like Americans on American roads where cars are considered superior and above all other forms of transportation. Have you seen an American when they try to drive in Europe for the first time? It's not pretty. Of course, these tech companies could spend years retraining their vehicles to drive like Europeans on European streets, but you and I both know that's not going to happen. They're going to set American-trained cars loose on European streets. I hope I'm wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised if European cities are pressured to Americanize their streets to make them more self-driving friendly.
That's
Which
why we
brings us
need
to
to
another potential
smash
issue with these
corporations.
cars. They are not so much programmed as they
You're
are
not you're
trained.
not going to the right
They
thing.
learned how to drive by monitoring what real human drivers did through millions of miles of driving. So let's say that in the future, a city wants to change the way their streets work, to improve safety, to speed up public transit, or to make more room for walking and cycling, whatever. It won't be enough to just put up a sign and update the rules of the road. Governments will need to convince every self-driving car company to retrain their cars, and given that these are multi-billion-dollar international corporations with an army of lobbyists, how likely do you think it is that those changes will go through? This could result in our cities getting locked into what they are today, with any new changes being dictated by car companies, which I guarantee you is not going to favor anything that results in fewer cars.
Of course
Of
not.
course, there are a lot
So
of
we need to vote for
problems with
me.
our current transportation system, but I am skeptical
Give me
that
money.
self-driving cars will truly solve any of them, because apart from the supposed safety claims, when you boil it down, self-driving cars are really just promising to be cheaper taxis. Yeah, they're not driven by a human, or at least not driven by a human who is currently in the car with you, but otherwise, they're just cheaper taxis, right? Like, do you seriously
They're
believe
not
that all of
gonna
our urban
save us any
transportation
money.
problems would be solved tomorrow if only taxis were cheaper?
No,
And I'm even
it's
skeptical about the cheaper part.
it's not
We
gonna be
saw this
cheaper.
happen with Uber and Lyft when app-requested ride sharing was introduced. Uber was cheap, that is, when the venture capitalist money was flowing. In fact, it was so cheap that several cities in the US reduced investment in public transit in favor of subsidizing rideshare rides, and it worked for a while.
No,
But
I will
taking an
subsidize
Uber
my
isn't cheap
trains.
anymore. And I'll leave a link to this great article with an analysis of why those price increases can't be explained by an increase in costs, rideshare legislation, or inflation. They raised prices because the owners and investors of those companies wanted a big return on their investments. The exact same thing is playing out now with self-driving cars. Hundreds of billions of venture capital are flowing into the development of autonomous vehicles, and companies like Waymo are using that money to make their robotaxi rides price competitive to traditional taxis. And I find it wild that people online will unironically say things like, in the future, AVs will be cheaper than taxis because there's no driver to pay. Like, do you honestly believe that the prices that companies charge are based on what they cost to deliver? Of course they
No,
aren't.
they're just
They charge
maximizing
as much as
profits.
possible to maximize profits, and once they've eliminated or colluded with the competition, they can charge whatever they want. And I shouldn't even need to say this, but turning your transportation system over to a handful of multi-billion-dollar corporations
Is
does
a
not
horrible
result in
idea.
good outcomes for anybody except the owners of those corporations. It's commonly claimed that self-driving cars will reduce the amount of cars on the road and eliminate parking lots. The idea is that you will be dropped off at the door by a self-driving car and you won't need to park. And that's true, but you can literally do that today, right?
With a
You could just
train.
take a taxi to work every day instead of owning a car, but very few people actually do this. Sure, it's
A train would
expensive
be
to
so
take
much
taxis
better.
everywhere, of course, but even wealthy people don't do this because people just like owning their own stuff and being in their own car.
And that's
There's
what they
this
say.
vague promise that your car could
And
earn
by they, I
extra
mean
money for
the
you as a taxi
corporations.
while you're at work, but
You will own
how
nothing
many
and you'll be
people
happy.
want their private car to end up looking and smelling like the inside of a taxi? So those cars are going to need to park somewhere, and their owners will want them parked nearby so that they don't take too long to arrive when they're ready to go. And you can forget about ever charging for parking, because if it's cheaper to just let your car cruise around the block while you're shopping or at work, then that's what people will do.
And then the gas
Another
cost.
common claim is that these cars will allow universal mobility to everyone, especially the disabled. But many people with disabilities require help from others to get in and out of a vehicle or to secure a wheelchair, so an attendant will likely be needed on board anyway. And given that you need a credit card and a modern
Ooh,
smartphone to
21
book a
subscribers.
robotaxi, this puts it out of reach of many people. Sure, the rich boomer with a bad hip will be taken care of, but they can already take a taxi today. This is really just an extension of the often repeated myth that cars are the only transportation that works for disabled people, and that as long as you have cars, disabled people are taken care of.
Trains. Trains are
This
so
is
much
a
better.
great article by disability advocates about how self-driving cars are a distraction to the solutions that they actually need, and I'll leave a link to it in the
The
description.
issue is the amount of cars.
But of all of the claims made by proponents of self-driving cars, the one that I find most ridiculous is the idea that they will reduce traffic congestion. There is absolutely no reason to believe that this is true, and lots of historical evidence to suggest that it is not. Every single time that we have done anything to make transportation cheaper or more convenient, the inevitable outcome is that people travel more often and they travel longer distances. There is decades of well-documented evidence that every time we widen roads or build new highways, it increases the amount of driving, and I talked about that in more detail in my video about induced demand. When Uber and Lyft came to cities, they also claimed that they would reduce traffic congestion. But the exact opposite happened, and vehicle miles traveled increased significantly. This will only become worse with robotaxis because people will take them even more often than they do Ubers today, especially while they're heavily subsidized. I've seen some people claim that robotaxis will reduce the number of cars in cities because they will park in parking lots on the edge of town and only come in when they're requested. But I don't believe that for a second, because one of
course
the
not.
major competitive factors between robotaxi companies is going to be how quickly they can get to their customers.
They'll
Consider
be
how impatient
roving
people
the
get
city.
while waiting for an elevator. There is no way in hell that people in the future will want to wait 14 minutes for a robotaxi pickup. Which is why the self-driving car parking lots today are right in the heart of San Francisco, but the future could be even worse. There's no cost to driving around most cities. Gas taxes are usually the only thing that even comes close to a user fee for city streets, but regardless, the robotaxi of the future will be electric and charged at private facilities. As long as the roads are free to use, there is zero incentive for these companies not to have robotaxis constantly circling the block so that they can respond to customers as quickly as possible. And when these cars are significantly less space efficient than buses or trams, that alone will result in less space available in our cities. But it gets worse. Consider today a suburban parent who drops off one child at elementary school, another at high school, and then drives to work. With self-driving cars, those kids will be sent in their own robotaxis, so that one-car trip today will become 3-car trips in the future. This is already happening in San Francisco, and it will only get worse. It's great for kids to...
And guess what else they don't mention? So all of the microplastics that we are currently inhaling that we get within the cities, this comes from car tires. So take that as you will.
have independent mobility, but we need to do that without just putting more cars on the
And we
road.
could absolutely do so with
In an earlier video, I talked
bikes.
about the problems that many European cities have already experienced after the introduction of 10-minute delivery services. And there are stories today from DoorDash drivers who are called to pick up trivially small orders like a single tube of toothpaste. As robotaxis become cheaper and more convenient, this is only going to become more common. They're going to be delivering anything within a few minutes with a car for every delivery. When cars became common, people didn't need to live near their work anymore, and cities started to sprawl as more car-dependent suburbs were built on the periphery. This resulted in huge volumes of traffic funneled into arterial roads and highways because there were more cars driving longer distances. Self-driving cars will only make this worse. When people are freed from having to pay attention to the road, they'll be able to go through their emails or take conference calls from their autonomous vehicles. So why live in a suburb at all? Why not live in a cottage in the middle of nowhere where land is plentiful and taxes are cheap? This will result in an exponential increase in the amount of vehicle miles traveled, with millions of cars driving very long distances regularly and putting even more strain on our transportation system. And it's going to make the existing problem of financing suburban infrastructure even worse. See my Strongtown series to learn how suburbanization and car-centric development is literally bankrupting North American suburbs already. But if you believe in the marketing of autonomous vehicles, then this technology will advance exponentially. Vehicles will communicate with each other to travel efficiently. Autonomous pods will
I
merge seamlessly
forever
onto
hate
high-speed
smart
self-driving highways for
vehicles.
even higher throughputs and speeds. And vehicles will
Autonomous
be more efficient than
self-driving.
ever
They're the
through
worst.
platooning or whatever. In this vision of the future, the transportation problems of today will seem laughably archaic, and we will achieve levels of efficiency we could only dream of. Here's a marketing video from Ford showing what they think the city of the future will be like. Look at all these problems with a modern city. Of course, these problems were caused by people using their cars in the first place, but don't worry about that, because buying their new cars will fix everything, so it's fine. Look, there are e-bikes and parks, futuristic trains, less parking. People can cross the street wherever they want, and magic crosswalks will appear. There are vacuum trains, pedestrian plazas, blue skies, and lots of trees. Every single problem will be solved. What's not to
With
like?
trains.
But before we get too excited about our utopian self-driving future, it's worth looking back at previous promises of the automobile industry. At the 1939 New York World's Fair, General Motors presented Futurama, the high-tech city of the future in the year 1960. This exhibit was absolutely huge. They had a ride that would take you over the city and even a life-size model of an urban neighborhood. In Futurama, car traffic would be eliminated completely with advanced motorways. These would be separated from all other traffic and allow cars to drive faster than ever before. Pedestrians would be able to comfortably walk through the city on elevated walkways while car traffic was safely whisked away on the roads below. But the reality was quite different. The motorways promised by Futurama were built, but they just induced demand for more driving and more car ownership, which was the car industry's real purpose in the first place, of course. They wanted to sell more cars. Instead of being the salvation of the city, elevated freeways divided and destroyed.
So here is my my opinion on this one, which is why I need this monetary support. Part of this is I will create my car company. The main goal of it will be to have, you know, a sedan, uh, a station wagon, a light truck, a crossover SUV type thing like a Jeep Wrangler, and a small truck slash van thing, right? They'll be easy to work on, and will just provide parts. That's what we'll do. This way, you can have your car. I can still make my money by selling you OEM parts at a cheap price. Now, sure, you can also buy like other parts, but I'll make sure that the parts that I provide are good quality parts that can go for the vehicle, right? You can of course get higher end parts from other people if you want to. That's fine. I don't care. You can go with lower quality stuff. I don't care. It's all great, right? But to make this happen, I'm requesting your financial support.
Neighborhoods. They flooded city streets with car traffic, increased pollution, and left municipalities with massive tax burdens and maintenance liabilities, to the point where many cities have spent billions to remove urban freeways in an attempt to repair the damage. There are many accounts online that show the destruction that happened to American cities because of car infrastructure, and I'll leave some links in the description. My point here is that new transportation technology can and will fundamentally change our cities, especially if there's money to be made. So we need to
You mean
seriously
money to be
consider how
stolen?
AVs could negatively affect cities so that we can prepare for them today. As AV technology improves, it will start to arrive in personal vehicles. Just like with cars, the first mass adoption will happen in suburbia, especially in the US and Canada. Suburbanites spend too much time sitting in traffic as it is, and it will allow those people to live even farther away from the city where property is even cheaper, so it will definitely be worth the cost for any reasonably wealthy suburbanite. And designing AVs for suburban roads is a much easier problem than for busy cities, so they'll be faster to market too. AVs will be proven safer than human drivers, so AV companies will lobby to have AV-only lanes installed on highways and throughout the suburbs. For those who can't afford their own autonomous vehicle, suburban municipalities will subsidize robotaxis in place of public transit. Entire suburban
Which is
neighborhoods will
stupid.
be built that are only accessible by autonomous vehicle, which has the added benefit of keeping any undesirable people out.
Which is
This is the next
stupid.
logical step to the gated communities that are already common across the US. Suburbs will rapidly expand to consume even more valuable land. Power lines, water pipes, sewage pipes, and all other infrastructure will become even longer
All
and
of
more
this
spread out,
designed
but
by
there'll
the
be so much
Synagogue of
money
Satan.
and debt flooding into suburbs on the promise of building the city
He's
of the
so close
future
to seeing it.
that nobody will stop to think about it. And besides, the bills to maintain it all are decades away. In other words, literally exactly what happened in the post-war suburbs of the last century. Autonomous vehicle companies may be making record profits from suburbanites, but the line must go up, so they'll look towards the cities, and their primary objective will be to eliminate the competition. In the 1920s, Los Angeles had the largest electric streetcar network in the world, but service declined significantly as the streetcars got stuck in traffic behind cars. And the streetcars couldn't compete with a heavily subsidized road and highway system. Private streetcar companies were bought out by National City Lines, a company that was financed by General Motors and related companies and was specifically founded with a goal of tearing up streetcar lines throughout the US, because well-functioning public transit is a threat to car companies. History is going to repeat itself here. The companies who finance autonomous vehicles are going to do everything in their power to cancel transit projects, lobby against funding for public transportation, and replace public transit with their private robotaxis. There will be autonomous bus concepts promised, and some of these will go into operation to replace today's buses and trams, but the real money will be in private AVs and robotaxis.
This is
Robotaxis
why
will
I
be
need your
pitched as a
support
more efficient form of
and your
transportation by
monetary
offering
support.
door-to-door service, and any train or transit lines will be converted to AV lanes. But there's nothing more space efficient than a train. This 18-lane freeway in Toronto is over 100 meters wide, but it moves fewer people per day than this single subway line because trains are so much more space efficient than cars. In the early 1900s, the Brooklyn Bridge in New York moved over 420,000 people per day, but in the 1950s, the trolleys were removed to make way for cars. Since then, the Brooklyn Bridge has never moved more than 180,000 people per day, well under half as many as when there was public transit. The same thing is going to happen to our cities with AVs. The decrease in space efficiency moving from shared transit to private transportation, coupled with the massive increase in
It's gonna
demand
be the
for cheap
worst.
subsidized AV
It's
rides, will result in a
it's literally
massive
gonna be the
increase in the number of
cyberpunk
vehicles in our cities.
dystopia where
AV
corporations are in
companies will
charge.
lobby for some roads to be designated as autonomous only. This will be pitched as a way to increase safety and efficiency, but the ultimate goal will be to eliminate public transit and human driving and get everybody to sign up to an AV subscription instead.
You
Here's
will
how a
own nothing and you
concept
will be
of this
happy.
called Loop NYC was pitched by a New York engineering company a few years back. In this video, they
Fucking
assign certain streets in
stupid.
New York to be self-driving only. They claim that this will be so much more efficient that other streets could be blocked off to cars completely and turned into a giant linear park. But AV companies aren't going to be happy giving up any roads, as their success is dependent on offering door-to-door service. So AVs will be required to go everywhere. They'll even argue that AVs should also be allowed in pedestrian areas because they're safer than human drivers and will offer an important service for people with mobility issues. When there's no price put on driving, competing robotaxis will circle the block in order to have the quickest response times. Private AVs will drive around automatically to get the cheapest parking rates while their owners are at work. The parking lots that we were told would become obsolete will be converted to solar AV charging stations for both private AVs and robotaxis.
My
And they'll
absolute
jump
hatred.
between stations for whichever one has the cheapest prices. So despite what the car company propaganda might show you, AVs are not going to let us replace roads and parking lots with parks. Autonomous vehicles will demand even more space in our cities, and they're going to get it. The next problem will be pedestrians. As AVs become more common, people will realize they can cross the street wherever they want because AVs will always stop. And there is no way that AV companies are going to put up with that. They'll claim that people crossing the street are crippling the transportation system, and they'll demand that fences be put up along important streets and roads. Bamberg is a small town in the U.S. state of South Carolina. Like pretty much every American town, they had a traditional main street. But this main street also
My
became the main highway through
abject
town,
hatred.
and all of that downtown activity, and especially all those people crossing the street, was interfering with the flow of car traffic. So they decided to widen the street and install fences along the sidewalks to prevent people from crossing mid-block. After construction was done, car traffic moved much more efficiently. And within a few years, every single shop in downtown Bamberg went out of business, and today it looks like a ghost town. Because believe it or not, people don't enjoy being on a cramped sidewalk next to high-speed traffic. This was a
Shocker.
monumentally stupid
But again,
idea,
I
but
understand
I
why
bring
this is
up
happening
before the
because
project, the
there's
director of the
a
Chamber
clique of
Commerce
international
said that the project will, quote,
bankers
be
that
a
wish to
major
destroy the
boost to
world.
the economy for the county and downtown Bamberg.
What better way than
There are a lot
separating
of
us,
people
isolating
who
us in our homes?
genuinely believe that if car traffic moves more efficiently, then businesses will thrive, when the exact opposite is true. Cars don't buy things, people do. So if you make a place inhospitable to people, nobody will buy anything. Expect the same thing to happen with autonomous vehicles. As the fences go up, there'll be no reason for AVs to drive slowly, so they won't. Streets everywhere will be just like downtown Bamberg, inhospitable places where people won't want to be, and street life will slowly die. With public transit, human drivers, and pedestrians out of the way, AV companies will demand an end to speed limits. They'll argue that these restrictions, designed for human drivers, are irrelevant for vehicles driven by a computer. This will result in a huge increase in vehicle throughput and will be considered a tremendous success. But when AVs are driven faster, pedestrian and cyclist fatalities will increase. AVs may have lightning-fast reaction times, but at high speed, the laws of physics win every time. Now, there will be outcries when someone is killed, and people will demand to slow down AVs to make them safer, but history will repeat itself again.
This is
Today,
exactly
cars are a
what
reality that
happens
we
if
deal with just about everywhere.
corporations
But
are
when
allowed to
automobiles were first
continue as they
introduced,
are.
people did
And
not
no
want
one
them in
sees
their
that,
cities.
and it pisses
Cars
me
were
off.
clogging up city streets and killing thousands of people every year. By the 1920s, the general public was very anti-car. Several cities had plans to require speed governors on all cars entering the city, and they introduced high fines for dangerous driving. But the automobile industry was not about to go down without a fight. They fought to get car-friendly politicians elected and voted down any anti-car legislation.
This is why I
And
need your
did they
help.
do anything to make their cars less likely to kill people? No, of course not. They invented and spent millions promoting the concept of jaywalking to make it the fault of the victims for not looking where they were going. This changed cities almost overnight. Streets went from being a common place for everyone to a place exclusively for cars just a few decades later. The jaywalking of the 21st century will be the transponder that everyone will be required to wear when walking outside if they want to avoid being killed by a car. When someone is hit by an AV, people will ask, well, were they wearing their transponder? And the news will report, the victim was not wearing a LiDAR reflector. These faster cars will also create more pollution and noise. Cars are a major contributor to pollution within cities. Air quality will improve as cars transition to electric, but electric cars will not solve this problem. Because a major
Microplastics.
source of local pollution from cars comes from the erosion of the tires, brakes, asphalt, and road markings. And all of
Yes.
these emissions increase as cars get heavier and drive at higher speeds. Cars also create a lot of noise pollution in cities, and that is not just uncomfortable, it literally creates a stress response that leads to physical problems, and I've talked about that in a previous video. There's a common belief that electric cars will solve this noise problem, but that's not really true.
The tires are the
Because
loudest
once a
part of
car
it.
goes above about 50 kilometers per hour, the sound of the tires becomes louder than the sound of the engine, and this gets worse as cars get heavier. Plus, the
And yet
faster
no
the
one
car goes,
sees
the louder
this.
this noise becomes.
No one
Many
understands
cars
the
in
actual
Oslo are
issues
electric,
is
but it's still
corporations,
very
which is why
loud on
I
this
need
pedestrian
your
bridge over
financial
the highway.
support. I need the Christian
With all
support.
of
I need
the
everyone's
extra
support.
electronics and computers,
Liberal,
AVs will be
conservative,
heavier than
everybody.
today's cars, and
And
they're
these,
going to be
I'm not
driven
talking like the
faster too,
politicians, I'm
which will
talking the
make the
people,
air
those who
toxic
need
near
to
autonomous vehicle
understand that
highways.
we need to work
And the
against the
noise from the
corporations
tires on the
because
road
all they're
surface will
doing
be
is
deafening, making
going to
these
be the
areas
death of us because they
uncomfortable
are
and dangerous
controlled
for
by the
anybody
international
walking
clique
nearby.
of bankers that
Eventually,
just want to
AVs will consume every
murder us
street in
all
the city
in a
and push
slow
out every
global
other form
genocide.
of transportation. The final step will be to remove traffic lights. About a decade ago, I saw
Okay, I'm done. I'm so mad. I'm so truly, abjectly just pissed. So that is all. Buenas noches.